Hi, this is Dina for Splitcoaststampers. In this video, I've got a bonus project to go along with my pencil on canvas tutorial, which I will link in the video description below. I'll be using these prepped canvas sheets, and I got this pad when we were living overseas, but you can find other canvas pads on Amazon and other art supply sites, or even prepare your own canvas fabric with gesso. I will list some brands on the tutorial page. I cut about a 4-inch strip to work with, and I'm going to be stamping it with hybrid ink, which will dry quickly on the canvas and also is permanent with alcohol and the other solvents that I'm going to use. So here is the product information if you want to take note of that. Several companies use this same manufacturer for their branded inks, so if you recognize this case shape from another company, the ink is going to be about the same. I'm stamping several times to get a good impression that will show well, and then I'm going to keep stamping the same image to fill up this piece of canvas, and I'm keeping the impressions close together so that I can cut small sections at any angle and have a piece of the image inside my cut. I've got a full panel with a few little blank spaces, so I'm going to stamp in those areas with a couple of texture stamps, and these are ones that live on my desk and never get put away. I'm just hand stamping now because I can manipulate the unmounted stamps into a curve and just print a small area at a time where I press down with my fingers. So I've inked the full stamp, and I can see by the shine of the ink where I can still get an impression down. So I'll stamp some script and then a few more spots with this crackle stamp, which adds some really great texture. Next, I'm going to add color to my background. So this color is light cobalt turquoise. I'm working with Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. And it's just getting scribbled into the open areas of my panel. I'm going to use rubbing alcohol to blend that out pretty loosely, and that is muddying, which is fine since the background is subtle anyway. So I either have a dirty brush or I should have waited a little longer or heat set the ink. Either way, no big deal. Next, I'm going to add color to the pine cones, and since these are small and the outlines are well defined and they're going to be cut up onto lots of different small pieces, I'm not worrying about details. I'm just getting color down onto the panel. I'm blending with odorless mineral spirits here, again very quickly for a loose effect. And please feel free to take more time with your coloring than I am here if that suits your project. You could even paint on the canvas or use a printed fabric and skip the pencils and blending entirely. That is all up to you. On the pine branches, I'm just adding color to the central twig, and then I'll blend outward from those sections with my paper stump to follow the little lines in the greenery. The stamped images are pretty simple, so they don't require much shading or layering. I just added a drop shadow where the two pine cones overlap in the image to give a little dimension there. And then I darkened the little branches with a darker green, again just in the centers. I wanted a little bit of splatter over the stamped images, and I tend to get splattered paint everywhere. So I found a flat box to cover my surface, and I used that as my palette as well. So I've got a little metallic gold paint and a long liner brush, and I dilute the paint down with water just enough to make it want to move. I roll my brush around in the paint until it's well loaded, and then I tap the brush on my finger to release the paint in nice little splatters. The longer liner brushes work best for this technique because there's a lot of bounce in the bristles. I let that dry completely, and now I'm ready to use this canvas to cover some wood shapes. I got these pieces from Michael's, but they're widely available. You can even use die-cut chipboard or layer up die-cut watercolor paper if you don't have the wood pieces, but I like how these look on the sides with the canvas layered front and back. Here again, you don't have to trace the outlines. I just did this to make sure I had a good section of the stamping in each cut, and also because the pieces are easier to cut out if they're on separate pieces of canvas rather than laying them side by side together on the panel. You could trace them on the back side too, or you could not trace them at all. Again, up to you. If you do decide to lay several pieces down together, make sure you leave enough room between the pieces to fit your scissor blades so you can cut around them when they're dry. I used matte gel medium to adhere the wood to the back of the canvas. You could probably use a PVA or a tacky glue as well. And then I laid a large acrylic block over my pieces after I had them all adhered so they would dry nice and flat. Once they're dry, or at least well stuck, you can trim closely around the edges of the wood. And then I like to take just a little gel medium on my finger to smooth down the edge, and that seals in any little threads that might be sticking out so that they don't fray when the piece is finished. When that side is dry, if you want double-sided pendants, you can repeat the same steps on the other side of the wood piece. And as a final step, I used a little matte varnish to seal the canvas and the coloring. You could use the gel medium for this step as well if you don't have the varnish, or you can use resin or a gloss varnish if you want a different look for your pieces. These pieces are dry and ready to make into earrings. The first thing I need to do is create some holes in the canvas that match up with the holes in the wood pieces. So I have an unfinished one here to use as a template. Just line that up and poke through from both sides. And I'm using a weaving needle here, but a piercing tool would work fine as well. Probably the easiest findings to use on these would be these little pinch bails. And these pull apart and they have a little pin in each prong. So you line those little pins up with a hole on each side, and then you pinch them together to set them. You don't even really need a tool unless you want to use pliers to squeeze them together really tight. The hole in the top of these goes side to side, so I need a jump ring to create a hole that is front to back for my earring hook, and I can attach those both together while the jump ring is open, and that one is done. I'll do the same on the second one to create my earring pair. So here are the finished pairs. I did a second one just using jump rings instead of the pinch bails. And then here are a few other variations using different canvas and different wood pieces. You could extend this technique to larger wood pieces for ornaments or any other wood decor, or incorporate them into other mixed media pieces or onto embellishments for card fronts. There are just lots of possibilities. I can't wait to see what you do, and I thank you so much for watching.